And remember, this test is over chapters 3 through 7, so that's a goodly amount of material. So open your Little Atheist books to page 52. And you did the first 4 quick questions, right? And we discussed those last week. The first 5? Yeah. What are some things we can't not know yet?
We did 6.
We did 6 as well, so we haven't done 7 either.
Excellent. Excellent.
I was thinking.
So we're picking up then on number 7. In your own words, explain why the moral law is undeniable.
Are we supposed to do this?
No, you weren't.
Okay.
We're doing this and you're filling in as we go. You did the reading though, right?
Wait, what was on again?
In your own words, explain why the moral law is undeniable. Do I want an answer? Yeah. Of course I would. No, I want to sit there with all of us looking at them really. Oh, great. Yes.
Well, because everyone knows it, even if they say they don't, they're still by if I hit them, they're gonna be upset. I'm gonna say I shouldn't have done that.
If you hit them for no reason, I mean, Charlie deserved it.
Yeah, he did, but if I hit Alice, she was a moral good. I would yeah, and she would agree with that, and that's why she'd be wrong, and that's why I'd be justified. But even though,
Yeah, it is. Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
Intuitively, and even if they don't know it based on how they behave, they sure know it based on how other people behave toward them. Yes.
I would say that injustice, the things that unjust feelings in someone are undeniable. So once someone feels injustice, no one really denies that it's a wrong thing. They just immediately feel like it's wrong. So the whole idea that there is a justice system proves that morality is not relative. There is a point where it becomes undeniable.
Exactly. And then, like we talked about before, we talked before about how there are things that are debatable. There are issues that are debatable, but that's then not part of the moral law. I've used this example in other classes and probably with you before, but you know that I go to a camp for kids 7 to 11 every summer that have been abused and neglected. If you hear about those sorts of things and it doesn't like cause something to rise in you, like that's not right, and there's this holy anger when children are. I just read a horrific article in the paper about a mother and a father that are both now in prison. He is in prison for a very long time. She took her daughter, her 12-year-old daughter, to get an abortion because her husband, the girl's father, impregnated her and serially sexually assaulted her. And the mom took her home and left her in the care of her father after. I have no filter from which to understand. And if that doesn't, I see the looks on your faces, right? That's the moral law. That when you tell someone that, and it's really happened to a human being. By the way, she's safe now, and they're in prison. But and they'll never see her again. But even that's a travesty, right? And we all know that's wrong. That alone shows that there's such a thing as moral law, and everybody knows it. Even those who claim there is no absolute law or there is no moral law value their right to claim that absolutely, right? And when their values and their rights are denied, they protest that. Say, oh yeah, sure, go ahead and get me in the case for no reason. Nobody says that. You can't do that. Number 8. In your own words, explain why our reactions help us to discover the moral law. Well, we've talked about this pretty much at length. But when we're treated unjustly, we protest, as we should, right? But that just shows that we really do believe there's such things in the law. That protestation shows that we believe in the moral law. There is such a thing as justice and rightness, and even when the moral law is not always evident, we see it in our reactions. I'm going to read to you from page 175. I'm going to have to find it because this is the new book and I haven't written all over it like I have in my book. So the second paragraph there. Let's go with the. I'll read starting at the second paragraph. Reactions even help us identify right and wrong as a nation. When Muslim terrorists flew our planes into our buildings with our innocent loved ones in them, our emotional reaction fit the immensity of the crime. Our reaction reinforced the truth that the act was absolutely wrong. Some may say, but bin Laden and his fellow criminals thought the act was morally right. That's partially because they were not on the receiving end of the crime. How do you think bin Laden would have reacted if we had flown his planes into his buildings with his innocent loved ones in them? He would have known immediately that such an act was undeniably wrong. So the moral law is not always apparent from our actions, as evidenced by the terrible things human beings do to one another, but it is brightly revealed in our reactions. What we do when we personally are treated unfairly. In other words, the moral law is not always the standard by which we treat others, but it was nearly always the standard by which we expect others to treat us. It does not describe how we actually behave, but rather it prescribes how we ought to behave. The moral law, we all have broken the moral law, right? That doesn't make the moral law valid or not true. It just means we're all sinners, and we break the moral law. In your own words, explain why there would be no human rights without the moral law. Yes.
Doesn't matter. You know, like there's no absolute right way to treat someone. It doesn't matter. There's no reason that you should have rights because you have no moral value.
Right.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say that moral law provides limits for our actions, for our evil. And without those limits, there's nothing really right or wrong anymore. It's like without light, it would all just be darkness. And without darkness, it would all just be light. There's not really, but without the other, there's no contrast, there's no comparison. So it all just is. So if it all just is, like you said, it doesn't matter. So right, you wouldn't have any right to anything because everyone would have a right to everything, if that makes sense.
Right.
So you don't own anything now because someone can just come and steal it. And if there's no right or wrong, there's nothing that can stop you.
Yes.
I just have a thought. I mean, everyone gets upset when like a woman dies, right? But doesn't everyone get more upset when a pregnant woman dies? Like, isn't that a natural?
I think the law even takes that into account.
But isn't it naturally you're gonna be worse if a friend woman dies? So doesn't everyone just naturally know that's gonna be like that's why. It's not because she's pregnant. It's because it's not just one person died. So can that also be seen as the potential way of like kind of looking at the reactions as to why people naturally think that's wrong?
Yeah, I think there'd be people that would argue that with you, but
Probably.
and probably the length of the gestation plays a role in that. But yeah, there was just a car accident just a few months ago where I think both of them were very pregnant, but at least one of them was, and that came in as a factor. Just the term itself, right? Human rights. That uh, that kind of presupposes there has to be something wrong. We have certain rights. If there are certain ways that we should be treated, then there also has to be ways that we should not. So you can't have one without the other. And even despots, even Stalin and Hitler and Pol Pot and all that knew that that what they were doing was at best illegal. But and if they would have been treated that way, in fact, Hitler chose to take his life instead of get the treatment that he knew he would get. And so it proves that that we all know that um, that there's a moral law. So this is what I wrote. A person or a country has to believe that such rights exist before they can enact much less codify moral law. Many of our laws are moral laws. You can't murder someone. You can't rape someone. You can't steal things from someone lawfully, right? So there have to then that means there have to be people have to have the right to not be stolen from, to not be murdered, to not be mistreated, for those laws to exist. And then the moral law also implies there's something bigger than our opinions. There's something beyond our opinions, because we know some things are absolutely wrong. So that's not an opinion. Moral rights are not an opinion. And even if someone says that's just your opinion on that, then say, okay, if it's just my opinion that murder is wrong, they couldn't. They couldn't say I would be okay with that and be honest. Yeah. What'd you say?
I said I think their opinion would change very fast.
It would change very, very fast. Yeah. So the moral law must exist in order for that to be the case. Number 10. In your own words, explain how we couldn't know justice or injustice without the moral law. Yes.
Because again, there wouldn't be anything to tell right from wrong. Like if someone walks up to you and says murder is wrong, like says who? There's no law against that if there's no moral law.
Yeah, we can't detect injustice, evil, if there isn't such a thing as good. They'd be the same. Writing in white pencil on a white piece of paper, there's nothing to show a contrast. But here we have a contrast. Yes.
I think that revenge is one of the big things that kind of helps really cure this. Because, you know, if more like morality, right, is relative, um, you know, then obviously revenge is okay. You know, oh, they did this to me. Well, then why are you going for revenge? If there's that wasn't wrong, then why would
be unnecessary?
revenge would be unnecessary? Why would so many people sacrifice themselves to get revenge? Because if there's no more objective morality, then wouldn't people be very for themselves? Why are they then sacrificing themselves in order to get justice or revenge for someone else?
And it doesn't even have to be an active vengeance, does it? Even if you
Just the fact that you want.
want revenge. That's an astute point. Not surprised by that. So number 12, right? No, 11. Okay. In your own words, explain how there would be no way to measure moral differences without the moral law. Yes.
It's a problem we had, like the 1900s and late 1800s, right? With science, they had no real scale. Each country would kind of have its own way to measure things, and so it would be really hard to transfer things between different places because they all had their own scale, right? And so you couldn't really measure across things. But I would say that I'm, relatively speaking, a better person than Hitler, right? But there were no objective thing for me to base that on of what is a good person, and you can't really you can't draw those kind of conclusions. If you don't have a standard, you can't compare anything. Right? It's why it's so hard to compare me and Alex. Who's better? Right? Well, each person's gonna have their own things that are good, I guess, but if you don't have a thing to base that on who has more of a certain thing, you can't actually think of that.
You're taking a test on Wednesday. What am I going to compare your test to?
Answers.
Yeah, I am. What if I got one of Senora's tests and took all her answers for that? No, he's going to do very well. And how are you going to feel about me? Well, you're going to be calling, Mr. and saying it's time. But you're not going to be very happy with me, right? So that standard is there. Yes.
That's actually exactly what I was about to say. I was going to bring back the test
That's
analogy.
scary. That is really scary.
I was actually about to say.
Sorry. You can't tell which test. You can't tell which test is better unless you have a test that you know is right. So, if you just throw out the grading scale, then who's to say one test is better than another? You can't even grade them at all if you don't have something to grade them off of.
Would it be better if I just had my 3-year-old granddaughter Ellie write the answers and I just based off of that? No, still bad.
But even that is a moral standard.
Yeah, well, yeah. Better than taking a Spanish test. So there has to be an unchanging standard to which behavior can be compared. If we're going to say you can't do that, if we're going to say that's wrong, whether it's morally wrong or wrong in some other way, that assumes that there's this thing called right, and that it's real. It's like with the possible exception of, I know you never had Mr. Kozak, but with the possible exception of him, it's like if you hand drew South America and then you looked at a map, you'd see where you were wrong, right? Because the map is the standard. The hand drawing would have some mistakes in it. In your own words, explain how you couldn't know what was right or wrong without the moral law. Wouldn't know right or wrong.
Well, without the moral law, so in this world, actually no one knows what is right and wrong. So you would see people being super nice to people, you would see other people murdering people, and there would be no sense of justice, no realm of people going to jail. So everyone would just do whatever they felt like. So there would be no contrast, there would be no justice system, because there would be no need for justice system, because everyone would be all willy-nilly. No one would have any objective sense in anyone's mind. It would just be mine. So without a moral law that's ingrained in all of us, there would be no concept. Just like a concept of time, there would be no concept of right.
That concept exists, and we do know when we're doing wrong. We do know. Yes.
Little babies know that they've done something wrong. Like even as young as like a year and a half old, like if a baby bites me and I like get angry at it, it knows it did something wrong, you know? Like I've heard people say that like, oh, dogs are like that too. Dogs just get upset when you yell at them. They don't really know what they've done wrong. That's the difference between
Some of my, I won't name names, but some of my kids would go hide. Now, it was funny how they would hide, because they figured if they couldn't see me, I couldn't see them. So they'd hide like this, and they knew they'd done something wrong. They knew they weren't supposed to do that. Yeah, we all have that sense. To claim that something is wrong is to, by default, claim that something else is right. So every negation, I'm having trouble reading my own handwriting. Every negation implies an affirmation. Yes.
One thing that I just thought of as well, that we know how wrong things are. Like, we, in our minds, have a scale for how wrong something is, right? And you can't compare, like, it maybe you could say, like, oh, well, this is wrong and this is right. Things are relative. But if you have two things that are both wrong and the scale is relative, you can't figure out which one is more wrong. It's that there's no, like, in our minds, we have, it's like almost like a spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if it was relative, there wouldn't be that way to figure out the difference.
Right.
You know?
There'd be no spectrum at all. In your own words, explain how there are no real moral grounds for political or social dissent without the moral law. Yes.
What would there to be what would there to be mad? There'd be no reason to be mad. That is what I'm trying to say. Like, on the bright side, there wouldn't be any more riots or anything like that, because they wouldn't have any reason to be mad. Like, if someone is a serial killer and goes and stabs everyone, then no one else has a say if there's no moral law. Because
on the bright side, there would be no more
riot.
Oh.
too.
On the bright side, there would be no more
didn't
rights,
see that
you know?
bright side either. Yes, Ayla.
So the base of political and social dissent is, for example, so in politics, everyone has a value. So if there's political dissent, so like for example, there's a scandal in whatever Democrat, Republican side, whatever, there would be no political injustice or any sort of value of what is right and wrong. So we wouldn't have political parties. Also on social dissent, we wouldn't have so for example, Hitler, he would not be as famous, nor as, we wouldn't be in as, like,
He wouldn't be the paragon of evil.
yes. He would just be a random citizen walking down the street.
Just to claim that there is something that is wrong that needs to be righted whether it's mistreatment, whether it's injustice, no matter what it is to claim there's a moral law, that there's something that is right and there's something that is wrong. And so if there is no moral law, then there's no cause to oppose or outlaw anything or to protest anything because nothing is ultimately wrong. And yet, when we see things like racial injustice, and we see things like murder, and we see things like child abuse, we get upset by that. We get angry about that. As well we should. And that proves that there is a moral that we all know intuitively. Number 14. In your own words, explain why we wouldn't make excuses for doing wrong if moral laws didn't exist. Yes.
We want people to look at us in like a good way, right? And I don't think that, if there was no moral law, then we wouldn't look at other people as bad people if they had done something wrong, right? And so there would be no reason to say, oh, well, I had a reason for it, because you wouldn't need to justify that, right? The only reason we justify that is we're trying to say it wasn't wrong, even though it was.
And we know it was.
Exactly. And that's.
I've never had anyone come up to me, I'm so sorry I got 107% of the test. Nobody's ever said that to me. Yes?
So to back up the mistakes you make, but without the law, there would be no mistakes wouldn't be mistakes.
Right. To make an excuse is to admit you're wrong. You don't excuse good behavior, right? Yeah, I know. I gave that guy a new car because he needed one, and there's no reason to make an excuse. Yes.
We wouldn't care if morality was actually relative. If someone looks at us and thinks they're a bad person, it wouldn't matter to us because in our mind, nothing is right or wrong.
Yeah.
But also, nobody would be able to look at you and say you're a bad person because there's no
Right.
So, really,
That's not the way the
there
world.
wouldn't even
that's
be
not
any
the way it
reason
works,
for
right?
you to make an excuse for doing wrong because technically in everyone else's minds, if there's no moral law, you haven't done it.
You haven't done anything wrong. Yeah. So.
I think all 5 of these last answers that we filled out are pretty much, they boil down to the same thing. If there's no moral law, then what's the point? What matters? Nothing.
Right. In terms of morality.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at these engaged questions quickly, and then we'll play the keys of quiz tomorrow. You'll have some time in class after that to study for your test. How would you respond to a relativist who says there are no such things as absolute morals because our views and behaviors change all the time? Yes.
Because our society is turning further away from God and the Bible, good in general, it doesn't mean that good has changed. The definition of good has not changed since I don't even know the 18th century. It's always what's good is good, and what's wrong is evil. That's stayed the same. It's just our opinions about it.
Since the garden. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Going off that, a lot of people are saying oh, this country's going downhill, that are atheists. Why do you think there's people like this running around who believe there is no moral right or wrong?
Right.
And also on top of that, completely different point, but morals don't change, our perception of them do. There's some people who believe abortion is okay because they don't believe it's an actual human in the womb. They believe it's just like a lump of cells or something like that. Whereas we believe that it is a human from the moment it's conceived.
Right. So changing behaviors don't change the standard any more than speeding motorists change the speed limit. So it doesn't change the standard. Yes.
I think it's a good point Seth made. I like how, the abortion argument. It never really revolves around fact of it's killing, right? What it always ends up revolving around is whether or not it's a baby, because both sides agree that killing a baby is wrong. And so what one side is trying to say is it's not a baby, and the other side is saying
It's not wrong.
exactly.
But the standard,
So this, but both sides are
they
agreeing on
agree that it would be wrong to
it
kill
would be wrong to kill a baby.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yes.
The abortion argument these days, it's changed a little bit since what it was. They'll no longer like argue till the day they die that it's a fetus. They will admit that it's a baby, but that in their mind is it doesn't. They don't care that it's a baby because the woman's rights are more important than the baby's rights.
And
So
that
they
is
still
true.
will.
That is true, and it has changed from
Yeah.
the time I was.
But what they can't answer is why like you can't just kill a baby that's out of the womb. That's like what changed it.
Yes.
Going off of that, technically the baby's life should be more valuable because it has more life to live, more opportunities to do good than the woman does because she's like halfway through her life.
That's
Anyway, a
debatable,
little bit.
and we should do that. That's
Anyways,
debatable,
anyways.
and I don't think my life is any less valuable than yours, but sorry. I'll plan to live to 123.
Wait, this I thought thing, and it's a big problem nowadays with like electric cars and like self-driving ones. If they have a baby